Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek on George Santos being expelled, going viral, getting 1 million views on the Twitter, or as 18 people call it, the X. Let me know, anecdotally speaking, what do you call Elon's social media site when you're hanging out with your friends? Do you call it Twitter or do you call it X? I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say and what the breakdown is. Now, Vivek got about 1 million views and 19,000 likes for this particular video. And without further ado, I'll play that really quick.
Has some serious problems. This George Santos guy has some serious problems, and I'd live a good life if I never met the guy. Probably most of us would. But I think it's wrong that he was expelled without putting it to the voters or without running it through the court process. The judicial system determines the guilt. The guy's been indicted. Let that play itself out. Anybody since the Civil War who has been expelled, it's only been 2 people, both of them were convicted in a court of law before their fellow congressmen got them out. As ugly as politicians are, and I think many of their behaviors are god-awful ugly, some of them downright criminal, we have a system for dealing with who serves in Congress. It's this thing we call elections in our country. We have them every 2 years for Congress. There's another one next year, just like there was one last year. So if it has to be outside of that normal democratic process, it better darn well be a court of law that's found somebody guilty. Now that this guy has been expelled, and he does seem like a pathological liar and everything else, if what's printed in the press is to be believed. That being said, this sets a terrible precedent. Now that they can use this for George Santos, they can use this for anybody. I mean, Bob Menendez, gold bars. You could talk about that example. Go straight down the list. This should be up to the voters and to the courts, not to a bunch of fellow congressmen to override the democratic will of the people. And that may not be a popular position right now, but I think it's important that somebody speak the truth, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard.
So it'll be interesting to see. Do you think most of the comments agree with him, or are they more contrarian? Let's dive in the comment section and find out. Now, one of the very first comments comes from the right guy, and this says, quote, Tlaib, Omar, Mendez all have reasons to be removed, yet nothing happens, unquote. I got 1.4 thousand likes, which, well, yes, they're on the left side of the political aisle. Usually, not always. There's a lot less consequences for many of their actions, to be frank. Let's see here. I'm Fancy says, quote, if we expel all pathological liars from Congress, no one will be left. Wait, I have an idea, unquote. Got 1.4 thousand likes. Even Miles Strong says, quote, a smarter Congress would have said, quote, if Santos goes, so does insert terrible Democrat here, unquote. Instead, they caved, unquote, getting 581 likes. Which, yes, that's what Republicans do. It's part of the reason I think that the NFA is still around. The National Firearms Act was passed in 1934, which makes it extremely prohibitive to buy things like short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, even things like suppressors. You can still buy them, but there's a bunch of extra paperwork, a tax stamp, in addition to a sales tax. It's ridiculous. And Republicans, throughout my lifetime, they have instances where they've had that presidency, the House and the Senate, and yet they couldn't repeal those anti-Second Amendment laws. Well, why? I think partially because there's a lot of rhinos, Republican in name only. Basically, they're just diet Democrats with different names or different letters by their voting. When you go to the vote, they have a different letter by them, but it really is a D. Which is why I always say you should always look into the voting patterns of the person you're voting for, not just because they have a D or an R next to their name when you're casting your ballot. Now, going back to the comment section, someone by the name of Ellie A says, quote, and why would Republicans expel him knowing he'd be replaced by a Democrat, unquote. They got 282 likes, and yes, that's a good point as well. Commander Phil Labonte says, quote, Santos has to go, but so far Mendez gets to stay. It's all a clown show, unquote, getting 672 likes. Someone by the name of Moderate to Severe says, quote, the character of Santos isn't what's in question. It's that the process they used to eliminate him can now be used with reckless abandon, unquote, getting 409 likes. James Giannitti says, quote, we are quickly becoming a, quote, guilty until proven innocent, unquote, society, unquote. Quote within a quote. Awkward as hell, but that's how it was written. They got 340 likes, and we're already there, unfortunately, especially for just individuals, just regular civilians. I mean, if you're accused of anything, you're guilty day one. You have to prove yourself innocent. It's unfortunately, well, depending on political affiliation, that's become all too much of a reality these days. Someone by the name of Keacho says, quote, if being a liar and fraud were grounds of expulsion, nearly every member of the government should be expelled, unquote. Got 720 likes. Midwest Mom says, quote, which is the entire point, to make an example of him, unquote, getting 34 likes. Lou Prayer says, quote, Vivek, you're the man, great position as always, unquote, getting 67 likes. A lot of comments saying something to the effects of, spot on, you're right, good take, Vivek. Those are getting between 30 to 40 likes on the Twitter. And interesting enough, this is perhaps one of his most popular takes on an issue, because I'm not seeing a lot of disagreement with Vivek's take on this. Usually there's at least, 20% maybe people who are more contrarian. But yeah, this is perhaps one of Vivek's most popular takes, and it'll be interesting to see what the political implications is of the situation, and if the shoe is ever on the other foot. Now, again, thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today, trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of December, so if you click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, leaving a comment is a great way to leave some feedback so I can know how to make the show better and better, so you try to improve the production quality. Lastly and finally, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.